All right, it is episode 3 of the summer series as we break down the roster all through the offseason. It is the offensive line today. Maybe no position group more polarizing on the team this offseason than the offensive line. We'll get there quickly. George Carmi is out today on vacation. Gave him a little time off to enjoy the beach. But that is no problem from Red Zone in the lab. We got Deuce today. Deuce, how are you, buddy?
Doing good, hanging in there. How y'all doing today?
Doing good. Thanks for filling in for George so he could take a little break.
Yeah, cool.
What you got plans this week
Yeah,
for?
actually, my daughter's getting married Thursday.
Oh wow!
Uh,
Congratulations.
so
Congratulations.
yeah, thank you. So they gonna be doing all that stuff, and after today, I'm just pretty much doing whatever they tell me to do. So there you go.
That's right. Now, are you a fan of this young man, Deuce? I mean,
Yeah,
got
he's a
good
cool
things
guy.
going through?
He's a cool guy. He's a cool guy, but I don't want no family drama with my daughter. So I talk to y'all off air. But nah, he's a cool guy. He's a Commanders fan, right? Young
Well,
guy, Commanders
That's a check
fan.
mark.
Yep, he's a school teacher. He loves the kids. He coaches football. He's really good at coaching football. You know, he had a lot of offers this all season to join different school counties. So yeah, he's a really good guy. He's a really good guy.
okay, love it. Adam, let's get into this thing. It's interesting. We talked a little bit about this in previous episodes. After last season ends, it feels like obviously quarterback always, but outside of that, offensive line was a place where they really could use an upgrade. Got a lot of guys that I like to call might could be guys. He
Right.
might could be a tackle. He might could be a guard. We'll get to whether that's a good thing, but I think they went out, and it feels like on one hand that we're not that much better off than we were when the season ended last year. However, they spent a lot of premium resources on the offensive line this offseason, Adam. They added what they assume is a starting center. They added what they assume is a starting right tackle. I think they feel that Cosby can play right guard. And you're bringing back Charles Leno, who is, I think, better than average. And let's face it, posts all the time. They also spent a third and fourth round draft pick, which is premium capital in the draft, on offensive linemen this year. And yet, Adam, it still feels like we're no better off than where we were last year. Let on a broad scope, how do you feel about how they treated the offseason as far as this offensive line is considered?
Yeah, I think that there's a couple guys out there, a couple veterans that would made a lot of sense, to bring in. We saw last year they brought Trey Turner and some of these, bargain bin. No offense to these guys, but that's what they are. Right now, from what I'm hearing, they're set at every position except for left guard, where Sadiq Charles is getting a lot of praise. Him and Paul battling for that spot, but I'll be honest with you. As far as is it better than last year? Is it the same? I think slightly. I think whoever steps in for Norwell out of the guys I mentioned is an upgrade because I think the game passed him by. As far as center, that was a rotating door. If we can get Gates to play, if not most of the season, you mentioned they drafted the kid out of Arkansas. He'll have a chance, but I think the best case scenario for him is just wait, bide his time because Gates, they're paying him to be a starter. It's not huge money, but around the neighborhood of $8 million a year, they're counting on him to start. But to me, it continues to come down to the tackles. Wiley, I know a lot of people are high on him. Some of what I've watched the tape on him, good and bad. He actually had some really good reps at guard. So they're penciling him at right tackle. I think he was helped a lot by the Kansas City offense, but he's back with the enemy. So, that's something to be encouraged about. But for me, it's like you said, it's just a lot of unknown. And those tackle positions, that's where, can make or break a season. And I feel like they should have at least maybe looked at somebody to compete with Leno. I know he's making, the most money on the offensive line right now on a yearly basis. But I would have liked to see a left tackle, if not drafted, earlier or free agent maybe come to compete. But yeah, it's just a lot of question marks for me. It's my top concern without a question.
It's interesting about the tackles. I was talking with somebody the other day on the pod, and essentially, as I understand it, the plan was to draft Wright. That's who they
Right.
really wanted at
Wanted to
right
play.
tackle.
Yeah.
That's right, from Tennessee.
Right.
And he went crazy early.
Yeah.
And maybe the one of the biggest risers in recent draft history. And I'm not mad at the Forbes pick. What's interesting though is so Wright, because of who we have personnel wise, would have fit right in
Right.
and plays immediately. One pick before then, the Steelers draft the left tackle from Georgia,
Yeah.
Broderick Jones, who you know I'm a huge fan of.
Me too.
But the interesting thing is, if Commanders trade up 2 spots to take Broderick Jones, that's fine. But I don't know that he's good enough right now to beat out Leno for an everyday job. In
Right.
fact, I think they're seeing that now in Pittsburgh. He needed a little bit more time.
Right.
And so it's like, what do you do with him? Because he essentially would sit, and you definitely aren't doing that with a first round pick. So they kind of, pivoted, which is fine. But I think it's interesting now. The thing, Deuce, that I'm curious about with the tackles, I like Leno. I think he's fine. Last year they gave no help to the tackles, so just schema. We can get to that later, but just scheme alone ought to help the tackles by getting some help out there. My thing, Deuce, is what happens if one of them get hurt?
Yep.
Who are the backups on this team, Deuce?
Yeah, we're in trouble. I mean, like one thing that Breeze usually say on Twitter and on the show is that we have 5 O linemen, but we don't have a starting 5, right?
Right.
So
Mhm.
I think that makes perfect sense because we have Leno, and then you have, I guess Cosme is going to be the right tackle. So who we have? We got Lucas, right? And we have Sadiq, who's supposed to be battling for the left guard, and we see how that fared when they try to put him at left tackle. Then you got Daniels, which Ron says is a project, so he's probably not getting any snaps. So we're going to be in trouble when it comes to both tackle positions. There's a whole lot of position flex. You guys know how I feel about the position flex. I want some guys that are artists at one position. You could give me a few guys that have some position flex, but we seem like we just have a bunch of position flex guys that's not aces at their positions, and they're just fill in at other positions. But like you said, Doug, if Leno goes down, we're definitely going to be in trouble. And one thing about Leno, when you look at the numbers, right? When you look at the grades, you look at the stats, you look at all those things, he's like a top 15 left tackle. But the thing about Leno to me, the same with Fuller, is when they get beat real bad. And it's flips the field, and it's an impact play, and we just do not forget those big plays. And I think that's the thing about Leno and Fuller, is that when they get beat really, really bad. But outside of that, you really don't hear him too much during games. And when you look at the stats and the numbers, especially if you look at PFF grades, he's top 15, top 12 at that position.
He reminds me a lot of a former Redskin, Morgan Moses, on the
Yep.
right side. Maybe a little underappreciated, maybe a little bit better than what the fans thought. But Charles Leno, first in snaps played last year per PFF, which is huge. Fourth in penalties, 4 penalties last year, which would make him 55th, and 8 sacks, which means he'd have been fifth. But you're right, dude. Some of those sacks, you remember the Giants game.
See, that's the game, right?
Terrible,
That's the one.
terrible timing.
That's the one.
Yeah.
Yep.
But yeah, I was looking on the website for the Commanders, and really it's Elias Lucas or bust there at the backup tackle spots. Adam, it's interesting. 6-1-1 is the record for the Commanders when Tyler Larson is the starting center. Interesting. I mean, will this be a competition? Do you think there's actually a chance that Tyler Larson can take that starting job. And that's the funny thing about the third round pick. I don't see any way where Stromberg gets on the field this year. So big balls call by Ron there, taking that third pick and using it on a developmental player, because he knows as well as we do, that's a 50-50 shot for him at best that he's ever going to see the results of that pick. But I digress. Do you think there's a chance Larson can beat out Gates? You've watched the tape on Gates a bit from New York. He's definitely not a guard, right? Definitely a center only. It's his job to lose, but tell me about Larson.
Yeah, well, with Larson, I think, he's the ultimate backup. So I think, you have him more like he's competing for the backup spot with Stromberg. And like you said, I think with Stromberg, he's got a lot of development to do. But interesting enough, Gates does play guard as well. I think that would have to be an emergency situation if they started to have a lot of interior linemen go down. But to me, Gates is probably the most Gates and Wiley are probably the most solid jobs right now, and Leno. As far as the guards, Cosme, I think he's shown enough that he's going to play there. But yeah, Larson's just a really, really good backup. And I think, it was really smart for them to bring him back. But he's really more competing with Stromberg to be a backup. And I think he'll get that job. So with Stromberg also, we need to keep in mind, he did play guard as well. So you got a bunch of these guys that can play center guard. Some of these guys, like Braden Daniels, we mentioned offensive tackle. I love him as a guard. I think he is a future guard on this team. But worst case scenario, things start to break down. You've got some interchangeable pieces you can move around. But like Deuce said, it's a little much because you have a bunch of guys that can play a bunch of positions, but really haven't mastered one. Gates, from everybody I talked to, Giants fans, everybody that's been following him since college, they say we got a really good player as long as he can stay healthy. He had that gruesome knee injury, I think it was 2000, end of 2020 or 21, I believe, and literally almost lost his leg. It was similar to Alex Smith without, all the infection issues. But, so that's a concern as well. But out of all the positions along the offensive line, center, I feel pretty good about it. If somebody goes down, it's Larson. Worst case scenario, you have Stromberg third. So that's probably their strongest depth position on the offensive line. But yeah, again, it's a lot of question marks. How good Gates can be, long term. And you just look at Philadelphia, the Giants, and Dallas. These pass rushers, these defense. They needed to. I saw what they did on the defensive backfield, and they really, looked to have some good matchups there. But with offensive line, I don't really feel like they made enough moves to counter that. I think you should have at least brought in some more developmental guys. I researched, some of the undrafted free agents. Again, Mason Brooks, Ole Miss. Some talent. Again, another guy that's more suited to play inside rather than outside, even though they, the theme for them is drafting guys and signing guys that are 5-6 year college guys that play multiple positions. But I think they really need to focus on guys that are going to solidify that position. And, we still got time to week one. We've seen in the past, players become available, just not too often. It's not really a left tackle. So, I think what you see is what you get right now.
That's most likely correct. Although it was about this time, maybe a little bit later, when they got Leno, right?
That's right.
Odd things happen come this time of year. I do think that they could look to upgrade the left guard spot. Deuce, in my mind, I think Cosme can play it. He's had enough time looking at it. It's that left guard spot that bothers me a little bit more. It's Charles or bust, or at least this is the last chance for Charles, I'd say, right?
It is.
Yeah, I agree. I can't think of his name right now. Sam Fortier. Sam Fortier has a great had a great interview article when he met with Sadiq Charles prior to him being drafted. Beautiful story, awesome story, make you really want to root for the guy. And I think he understands it too. Like, I think Sadiq understands that this could be it for this NFL career. He's been hurt a lot. Once he started getting off, he got injured. What was that, 2021? I think when he was coming in as a starter, he ended up getting hurt. When he looked good, and you see him everywhere, right? Like, everywhere there's some type of community event. I remember at Bieniemy's presser, he was there. It's like he's always there. He's showing up. He's doing the part off the field to let them know that he wants to belong. But what's going to matter is what he's going to do on the field. He has a great opportunity to win this left guard job. So he has to show them that he can do it. He has to perform. And just like with a lot of other positions on this team, that Ravens bump, those 3 days is going to be very, very important for him. He's going to have to show them that he can do this at an NFL level. He can be consistent at it. And I know Adam, you do more tape than I do, and I don't know like if he's changed his body, if he's changed anything like that, his muscle mass, different things like that coming in the season. But to me, he looks leaner.
Yes.
Seeing him up person at OTAs, he looks leaner. He looks a little bit faster. He looks a little more twitchier. But again, that's shorts and shorts. But compared to last year's shorts and shirts, he looks entirely different. And I think just having Bieniemy there can really push, because if Bieniemy can't get it out of you from what we've heard, how you get it out of people, I just don't know. But hopefully, like, I'm rooting for Sadiq Charles to win that job. And it also would be a good check for Ron Rivera, when it comes to believing in someone like Sadiq Charles.
It's interesting with Sadiq, Adam. He was the left tackle for Joe Burrow on that national championship team. Had come in, as I recall, and was an SEC all-freshman that year. Got a little bit of trouble, which is nice, Deuce, to your point that it sounds like he's cleaned it up since he's been in the NFL. Got drafted to play tackle. I think they quickly realized that was not the right spot for him. I know we have had this conversation, Adam. You've looked at the tape, and you always thought he was going to be better at guard, right?
Yeah, always from day one. And it's not his play on the field. It's just injuries are one thing. It's like you want to see guys like, you remember Trent Williams, dislocated kneecaps, things like that. That's the kind of stuff that offensive linemen can play through. And I'm not questioning, his heart or anything, but I think this is the first off season. If he can stay healthy through camp, he'll really have an opportunity to refine his skills rather than just rehab. So his athletic, he's got all the tools, and, right now it's Chris Paul, which I really like as well, but he's developmental as well. He's a guy that switched from tackle as well. So I think it's Charles, as long as he can stay healthy, I think he'll make Leno a lot better. So that's the thing. We need this to work out. But, man, he's got to be able to play through, like, the little nagging injuries. But I think that they're going to be headhunting for this team early on, because I think, it's basically have a rookie quarterback back there on offense, a totally rebuilt offensive line. Teams are going to be really attacking. So, that's why I feel good for the first time in years about having an offensive coordinator like Bieniemy, because he's a guy that's going to play chess out there. They've been playing checkers since Snyder took over the team. So I think he's going to be able to counter things, not put a lot of pressure on offensive line, and really move the pocket. We saw, they were talking to Eric Bieniemy about, like, some of the screens, a lot of RPOs he wants to incorporate. These are the kind of things that are going to get guys like Charles Cosme out in space, and they'll be able to utilize their athletic ability, because once you can get those guys out upfield, that's when big plays happen. So that's what I'm looking for early on. I don't think you're going to see too many, 5, 6, 7-step dropbacks. I think they're going to take a lot of pressure off. That's something that Turner just could never grasp. He was stuck in his system, and no matter who was on the field, no matter there, he was going to try to make it work. Bieniemy, I think, is the complete opposite. He starts to get injuries, like, let's say Leno goes down. I think you see a totally revamp in what they decide to run. So it's all about, the scheme, and the kind of, position they're going to put these guys back. But Charles, I think he can be really good. It's just got to stay healthy.
It feels like, and we won't see the offense, obviously, until week 1 and what it really looks like. But I don't know about you, Deuce, but it feels like this is the first time since maybe 2016 that we'll actually be running a modern NFL offense, the stuff that Turner was doing. And listen, I had high hopes for Turner, so I'll be the first to admit I got it wrong there. But I think Turner liked to use what the modern NFL is more like gimmick plays to help set up his big shots. It's really not the way it works anymore. Maybe, Deuce, Eric Bieniemy is the biggest help to the offensive line in free agency.
Yeah, I think Turner, the idea of being innovative, the idea of being the next one, the idea of being the next hot OC to have head coaching opportunity, I think that was the downfall of Scott Turner, right? Like, we saw some innovative things from him, but he just couldn't coordinate it, right? He was never able to tell a story from beginning to end. He was like all over the place, right? But when it comes to Bieniemy, no, we don't know what this offense is going to look like. We don't know what Bieniemy is going to do. We don't know if he's going to bring anything from Kansas City. Like we don't know any of that. But what we do know is he's been in a room with someone that tells great stories, right? Who tells great stories. So and then when it comes to the offensive line, he's seen it. Kansas City had a few seasons, a few stretches and seasons these past few years when the O-line was just horrible. But what did they do? He was able to help, which Turner didn't do all last year, right? I mean, he kept those guys out there on island for, like Adam was saying, 5 to 7 step drops, But when it came to Bieniemy, even when you talk about Wiley, like he sent help, he sent chips, he did all those different types of things to help his O-line first, because I think he understands that no play can develop without having protection for your O-line. And your point about Bieniemy being the most important piece to the offensive line, I think he was the most important, and I think he was the best acquisition to this team the whole offseason.
Adam, you mentioned it earlier. I'd like to go back to it and have you explain it just a little bit more for those watching. You mentioned how much the West Coast offense will help, particularly with the guards, and allow them to use their athleticism. The one thing that I don't mind with position flex and this is what the Packers used to always do, draft tackles and teach them to play guard because of the athleticism. That I'm okay with, and that is kind of what they've done here a little bit by moving Cosme into guard and Sadiq into guard. Explain a little bit about what some of that motion, some of what that move in the pocket type stuff will allow the guards to be a little bit more athletic in their pulling.
Well, a lot of it is to do with pre-snap motion. Like we saw a lot. We saw some of it with Turner. I think Kansas City ranked top, like number 3 in the NFL with pre-snap motion. So you're going to see your tight ends, your receivers, running backs, everybody doing that. And what that does is it causes a lot of confusion. Whoever's, the spy, who's ever tracking the movement pre-snap, it just causes a lot of confusion. So what you're going to see is a lot of misdirection. Again, I talked about, how they're going to move the pocket. And that's something that, the RPO does. It's not about, the quarterback keeping the ball and scrambling like a lot of people think it is. It's more about moving that pocket outside the hashes and, really creating opportunities, downfield in the middle of the field. But with this West Coast compared to, the version of Air Coryell that Turner run, there's a lot of similarities. From what I understand, it's the verbiage. That's the main difference. But what the number one difference we're going to see with this version, we're talking about the coaching tree. Everyone is questioning, he's never called plays, whatever. But we give credit to coaching trees all around the NFL. For some reason, Bieniemy's not getting this. It's beyond me, because again, I think, this is a great opportunity. I think he'll be a head coach after this year. And I think he's going to show why, because he's going to be able to put the players in position to expose matchups. And that's the biggest thing about the West Coast, how it's timing based. But what it does is it exposes portions of the field. Like, if you talk about Kelsey, it'd be great to have an all pro tight end like that. But I think they really like the tight ends that they have. They have the size, athleticism to really open up the middle of the field. So what Bieniemy is really going to try to do is, run a lot of tempo, keep everything going, limit the substitutions that, defenses are able to do. But again, it's all timing based. It's not really about, who can take the top off the defense, go route, stuff like that fans have been clamoring for years. That stuff will open up, because what happens is they'll focus a lot on the screens, a lot of the short intermediate dump offs. And what that does is it forces the defense to be more honest and play close to the line. That's when things are going to open up downfield for this team. And then, they'll eventually let it fly, because again, he has a strong arm, he has the ability. It's just more about building that confidence, getting to know this offense and seeing different looks, because that's what's different about the NFL game these days is defenses have come so far. They're able to disguise stuff. And that's one thing Del Rio, that saved his career. He's found ways to, disguise these cover twos, these Tampa twos, and really, you don't know who's coming in the line and who's deep and how many are deep. So, it's all about timing based like that. That's what's going to be the biggest difference, I think, with this offense than we've seen in the past. With Jay Gruden, we definitely saw some of it. I think Jay Gruden would have been a really good offensive coordinator for us, just not a head coach. But Bieniemy, you're seeing it already. He's able to dictate things at practice. He's setting a certain culture. That's what the difference is of a head coach and a coordinator. Can he put it all together? That's what, we'll wait and find out. But I think this is going to be a fun year.
Deuce put it best. We're definitely getting a better storyteller. I love the way that you did that, Deuce.
Yeah,
It
me
makes a
too.
ton of sense, and I think that's a great way to explain how it works. I thought maybe we'd save it, but we got a little bit of time. Adam, you brought him up, so we'll just include the tight end group with it. There are a lot of people that are concerned. Like, maybe one of the good reasons to group them together is I think if you ask people what their two main concerns on offense are, you'll get the same answer outside of quarterback, of course. Offensive line and tight end group. I like the tight end group. I think maybe more than some. I think part of that is because I'm higher on Bates than a lot. I think he's actually going to get a chance to shine a little bit this year. The big thing, of course, there will be the health of Logan Thomas. I don't think he ever was quite right last year. He didn't look right to me at any particular point last year. They say that he does look right in camp this year. Deuce, it's an interesting thing with Logan. I think a lot of people like him. It's that first free agent class with McKissick that Ron gets so much credit for. Logan Thomas's best season is 600 yards.
Yep.
I mean that's it.
Yep.
So is Logan Thomas one of these guys that we as a fan base have overhyped, or was he just a product of a system that didn't work out in his favor, then add in injuries, and it's kind of been hard to get off the ground? But for a guy that gets as much love as Logan, he hasn't really been all that productive in Washington. Are you concerned with Logan Thomas as tight end one for this group?
Man, like you can tell how bad it's been for us around these parts for the last
That's right.
couple decades, right? I mean, Armani Rogers gets hurt, the fan base explodes like it was Kittle, or one of those type of guys. Oh no, we this. I mean, like I like the upside. I saw the upside in that guy, but what did he get? What 3 plays, maybe 3-4 plays last year? That was kind of explosive from Armani Rogers. So, and then when you think about Logan, the way like we talk about Logan, the fan base talks about Logan, when you actually go back to that quote unquote breakout year, you can't see my because it's quote unquote breakout year, like you say, 600 yards. Like we just haven't seen. Like we're so desperate to have a star at all these different positions that we cling on to the mids in a sense, right? So, but when it comes to Logan, he does look better. He did have an extra little pep in his step. Again, it's only OTAs. We was able just to talk to him a little bit. Like he's confident about this year. He was going back to tight end U as we saw. He went back there. Cole was also there. But my thing was Logan's that he's getting older, right? He converted to tight end in the NFL, right? I think he's 31, going on 32, somewhere around there. So he's getting older. He had a very bad injury. I think he came back too early. I agree. But for me, what my hope is, and I love Bates. Like you don't hear people talk about Bates at all when they talk about the tight end, which I'm so baffled and confused about that. No, he's not a great separator. He's not going to beat anyone down the field, but he's always where he's supposed to be, and he always catches the football. And he's a good blocker. But for my hope, Doug Adam, is that come towards the mid-season, week 8, week 9, that Cole Turner is beginning to take over as tight end one. If it can happen earlier, hopefully that's the case. As we heard, like he was injured all for the most part of all last year. But like you said, like a couple of our other players, he's able to just do football stuff. You don't have to rehab, anything like that. He went to tight end U. I think that whole idea, I think, was just great. I mean, the great tight ends, I mean, even Jordan Reed was there, right? So I think that's going to benefit him a lot. And I'm really, really high on Curtis Hodges. I really like Curtis Hodges, the upside, what I think he can do. He's that prototypical wide receiver, tight end in today's NFL that looks like a wide receiver. So when it comes to the tight end room and it comes to Logan, I really think it's going to depend on what Curtis Hodges does this offseason to see how they're going to look at Logan. Because if Cole Turner shows great promise, again, during the Ravens joint practices, right? Bates is going to be here. If Curtis Hodges shows anything to have them believing that he can be a productive NFL tight end, I think the leash is going to be even shorter for Logan. I'm not saying he's not going to make the team. I think he's going to make the team for sure. But I think that leash, it might not be week 8. It might be week 4, week 5. We start seeing him not having as many snaps as the other guys. But that's going to be something that I'm looking forward to. I'm really looking for Cole Turner and Curtis Hodges to see what they do this summer. But I'm not surprised they didn't go tight end. I'm really not. I think they like the upside of what they have at the position. They drafted a tight end last year, right? So he was just hurt, so he couldn't show us if he could, if we can't.
Adam, a lot of people are concerned about that tight end room, mostly because the Chiefs run a tight end friendly offense where the tight end was very productive. And so it feels like you've got to have a great tight end for the offense. I guess I'd ask you, is that the case, or did they build the offense around a tight end because they have the best tight end in the league, right? Like, so do you have to have a Travis Kelce in the system, or will they build the system around the 3 great wide receivers that we have? I guess what I'm getting to is the tight end position as important as I think some fans are making it, simply because they saw what Travis Kelce did in Kansas City?
Yeah, it's important, but like you said, the we talk about trio of wide receivers. This is also an opportunity where De'Ami Brown and maybe some others can step up.
Sure.
So I think this isn't something that he's really had in Kansas City. Other than Tyreek Hill, kind of saw a revolving door year after year, bringing in veterans. Schuster, Watkins, in and out. But I think the kind of speed and ability that these guys have after the catch separates them, other than Tyreek Hill, from anybody he's had. So I think a ton of focus will be utilizing them. But then, we mentioned Hodges, he's a guy I really like. Well, former wide receiver at Arizona State, 6'8", not the fastest guy, but he has shown the ability to separate. Him and Turner are the 2 ones I'm watching for to create offense. Logan Thomas, it's just been too many years. He just has not refined his blocking ability. At this point, he should be showing a lot more. So I really think, like you said, Bates, I think that's a guy that's a mainstay at tight end too. And I think that we'll see a lot of, in and out, substitutions at the tight end when, because if Turner can stay healthy, he was a straight up red zone threat at Nevada. That's what he did. And I think you have those guys that can do that. It's more important that they can just, give you opportunities and get open and really take attention away from the receivers. I think that's more important, because the more one-on-one matchups that McLaurin, Dotson, and Samuel can have, the more opportunities for, yards after the catch and big plays. But it is a little bit of concern, but I agree with Deuce. I did not see them taking a tight end either. I think that they had a lot of other positions that they thought they needed to upgrade, but I'm not worried, to be honest with you, with the tight end position. I think that they've got, decent enough guys. I would like to see, some better blockers, because, regardless of how pass happy this can be, I think this team really has a successful season if you have, a 1,000 yard plus back and probably a second back that's approaching that. I think that's the best way to have success with this offense. And that's where Antonio Gibson's going to come in, because you talk about tight ends. I've talked to a lot of people who say, don't be surprised you're seeing, Gibson lining up next to the tackle on the outside on some plays, because Bieniemy really likes, his size. You're talking about nearly 6'2", so he's not, one of the smaller running backs. They'll be able to do some really creative stuff for him, pre-snap and after the snap. So I think they had the weapons, the skill position. That's not really a concern. Comes back to offensive line. Can they just give him protection? But I think they'll be okay with tight ends.
And Doug, Matt, real quick, I think the Castillo, like, we know Wharton is going to be the offensive line coach. Rivera kind of told us that, but I think Castillo being there, even when we was there, the tight ends was with the O-line a lot. Right. I think he'll also have you have an impact on the O-line. Because I think he's kind of moving, like, I think he has like a different position now, right? He's not over either one. I think he's like a special. I forgot what
overseer,
overseer type thing. So I think having him over both of those in that sense, hopefully can really narrow that in on Cole Turner, just to be just a little bit better. If we can get him in there to be just, better than Logan, just to get that threat, with him on either side. But I think Castillo is also a great acquisition, or because it's going to be important to the offensive line and tight ends.
Yeah, like we were saying last year, one thing I keep hearing over and over, especially, when I reached out to Doc Walker, their offensive line coach, Scott Turner and Rivera, there was a lot of philosophical differences between the three. And, we saw what happened with the defense with Sam Mills when they released him. We saw how good the defensive line came from then. So I'm hearing, expect a big jump from, offensive play, like you said, having the tight ends more involved. Because it doesn't even have to be that they're great blockers. You just have to be able to teach them to chip. You have to teach them, take better angles. Because sometimes that's all it takes. That can be the difference between a 5-yard runner, a 50-yard, run score. So,
and the backup tight ends like Bell and Kansas City were good blockers. I mean, Kelsey was the only one that I think was more, a decent blocker, way better route runner, pass catcher. The other thing they'll be able to use, which Cornelius Griffer, we did not mention, is back with the team again. I thought that was a big, because the big man at swing tackle is so good. I'm trying to think. I think maybe we got that then, fellas. Anything else on the tight ends, Adam?
No, I think, like you said, it's pretty self-explanatory. I think it's Logan Thomas, Bates second, and then you're going to have Turner and Hodges, getting reps, with Logan Thomas out. I think he has to just show, he can stay healthy. That's what the story with all of them, with the exception of Bates. So as long as they can stay healthy, I think, it'll be a manageable group. But again, it's a lot of pressure on the offensive line and the tight ends this season. But I think they'll be okay.
So, and I still think that I still would not be surprised if we find a veteran come in by camp to help compete at that left guard spot. I'm not sold that they're done at left guard just because Sadiq's looked fairly good in the early portions of camp. Deuce, anything left before we get out of here?
Yeah, I just want to ask, where do you all see Alex Armour fitting? Do you see him fitting at all? It's hard for me. I don't think so, but
it's a tight room, right?
Yeah, I think he's a practice squad. I think there'll be no question. I think someone's going to get injured. He'll be brought up at some point, but I really like his ability as well.
A drafted kid, right?
Yeah.
Deuce, tell the folks what you got coming up this week. You got anything going on this year? You guys taking the week off for the 4th?
Yeah, man, just the wedding. So I'm pretty much after this, I had to tell them, hey, look, they doing some moving and stuff. I'm like, hey, I'm on the pod, don't be so loud. But I'm trying to stay on here as long as possible because when I get over here, it's over. Like I'm gonna be all in their hands. So
and Adam, you're back to yard work now, correct?
Yeah, just yard work and writing. I just put out an article about Cam Curl. A lot of people with the tough time for content this time of year, but to me, there's still plenty to talk about. We talk about tight ends. I'll have an article on the tight ends coming out, but I just put one out about Curl. But yeah, we're inching closer and closer. Then as soon as we get to training camp, there'll be a hell of a lot to talk about. So I'm just looking forward to camp kicking off.
I am too. It'd be nice when they finally get the new owner in place because there's a lot of those like Cam Curl deals.
Yep.
I could see Kendall Fuller getting an extension to bring his number down. I think there's work that they want to do that they can't do right now because there's no owner in place.
Right.
All right, fellas. Well, this was great today. Always appreciate it. Deuce, thanks for filling in. Adam, I will see you next week. Fellas, enjoy your holiday.
Just take it easy, guys.
All right, take care.